Mario, how you doing?
I'm actually having a pretty good day.
Yeah,
I woke up feeling good. It's kind of rare for me.
splendid.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think yesterday I meditated most of the day, and obviously that was a much needed thing because it seemed to help a lot. Yeah, I think my mind needed to sort through a lot of things that I just been going through, people dying and all that.
you
It's a
say
really tough one.
you
It's
say
a tough one for
people,
me to deal with. Yeah, first my ex-girlfriend died, and then my best friend's mom died.
right? And so they
But
affected the deaths affected you?
yeah, I have trouble processing death for some reason.
Mm,
I always have.
yeah, that's curious because I was speaking to Paul and Rachel about similar sort of things a day or two ago, and I said to the mother of my daughter that I wouldn't mind if anybody died, save for my daughter. And I wonder why this is. I can only speculate that due to my past with the loss of my mother at such an early age, I've got a defense mechanism against that level of hurt. And so even though it was terrible at the time, it seems to have put me in some reasonable uh, stead for the life that I'm going to be experiencing. At some stage when I lose friends, and ultimately, everybody's going to demise.
Right.
It's just a case of who goes first. And so, although I'm not sure how I'm going to be dealing with that, I seem to think that I won't be affected too bad. And I think this is to do with the past, and also it's to do with kind of having this knowledge that we don't die in any case. Life is illusory. And when you think along these lines, then you don't take it that seriously.
And that's actually what makes me feel better is when I start thinking about breaking it down into the way things really are. And it actually makes me feel kind of selfish to think that, that they should be here all, till I'm gone or whatever.
Yeah,
But to think that they went back to their energy source is also a good thing, They're not suffering anymore.
yeah, and it is kind of like a selfish thing, of course, because it all derives from the self. Why did you leave me? Or wish you were still here? The memories, of the good times we had. I wish we could have some more. And it's all about feeling sorry for the self, really. Do we really feel sorry for the person that has died? Um, I don't know to what extent we can have that level of empathy. We wish. I mean, if you see, I have a dichotomous view on this, and in relation to children and young people, then it does hit me far more than it does with older people. If you've got people, say, like, 40, 50, 60, then I don't know, it seems like, well, it's not a bad spate of life. And if you used it well,
Yeah, at least they got a chance to live a little bit, right?
yeah. But the greatest thing that saddens me is when you hear about people's children dying. I've got no idea how I would manage that. Probably very, very badly. I remember on one occasion there The guy Wedgwood, who created the Wedgwood pottery, I think I'm right in remembering this. He had a daughter who was 7 years old, and at some stage, not too in the distant past, some of his effects were auctioned off, and one of the things that was auctioned off was a little like jewellery box, and it contained some small seashells in, and these small seashells were reputedly collected by his young daughter, and that broke my heart, to have a child that old die. The chances are via illness, stricken by illness, and their life taken away, and then the memories that are going to last forever in a person. It's going to destroy that person. That person isn't ever going to be the same. And but yeah, I don't feel anything like as strongly about death when people get older. I can't hear you now, mate. Can't hear you.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay. I tried the earphones, it didn't seem to work. Yeah, my godfathers went through a change when their son shot himself in the head. They were never the same people after that.
Mm.
My godfather used to take me fishing all the time, and I would come over and hang out and spend the night with them, and it was kind of like a second family. But after that trauma, it totally changed them. It's like they never recovered from it.
Yeah. Rachel and I were speaking about atonement. She wanted to try to find some atonement for things that were bothering her about people in her past. And so we had a couple of hours conversation about this, and we spoke about how we do this, how we reconcile these thoughts within ourselves, and why does the mind take sort of precedent with somebody over another? I mean, because it's not everybody that we feel so guilty in relation to, or sorry about, or whatever. We can do many atrocious things in our lives, and we don't carry the weight of it, and yet we carry the weight of some stuff. And so I speculated that we carry the weight of stuff due to our selfish nature. If there's something within us that is bothering us, usually guilt, or loss somehow, if you have acted in a way whereby you've damaged a friendship, and then you carry the weight of that's guilt, isn't it, and regret. And so you want to alleviate that from yourself, and so therefore you want to make amends, and you want to try to iron out the guilt, get rid of the regret, and so therefore this atonement comes about, and we want to make an atonement for selfish purposes. It's nothing to do with the other person in most instances.
Yeah, that's kind of like the conclusion I came with, that I was kind of being selfish to think that they should be around until I'm gone.
Yeah. And so, do you have any issues with atonement? I mean, of course we all do, but do you have any that spring to mind that just bother you and have bothered you for years?
No, not really. I try to not do things that don't really have a pull, towards. I kind of steer away from things that I don't have an attraction to. That's probably what's kept me out of trouble most of my life.
Right, and so there's no atonement issues, but there are death issues.
Yeah, definitely.
So why would the death of a friend's mother have such an effect upon you?
I think it's affecting me this way because in the back of my mind, I'm seeing my parents going through the same thing in the near future, and I'm not sure how that's going to affect me. So maybe that was like me preparing myself for what's coming,
Yeah,
for what's
but
coming.
they must be getting on in life now.
Yeah, my parents are in their 80s.
Yeah, and so I would have thought you'd be expecting that any day.
Yeah, I expected. It's just that this really brought it home.
And how do you
I got
think
this.
you'll feel about it?
Well, I'm definitely going to have to go and be quiet with myself somewhere for a while, I think, and just get over it, just like I did this last trauma I went through.
And so, what is it that you need to get over? The loss that they're no longer going to be around.
Yeah, it's strange to think that they're not here anymore. It's just hard for me to grasp that I can't talk to them anymore or see them ever again in this reality.
And yet, you don't have the greatest of relationships with either of them.
Nope, and that's very confusing to me.
Yeah. It's weird, isn't it? You see, when my old man died, I never felt any regret. I felt more contentment because that's what he wanted. And he'd suffered from depression greatly for 10 or 15 years, and he tried suicide on 3 occasions, or 2 occasions, and he was successful on the third or fourth. And so that's what he desired. And he just wasn't experiencing anything that he wanted to live for. And so for me, I was, I won't say happy, but I was sort of happy for him that he doesn't have to live in this horror on a day-to-day basis. And I'd seen how his body had deteriorated, and he'd looked like a ghoul at some stage, really like a ghoul. His face was hanging, he was like a zombie, he was puffed up, he was all white, and he wasn't my father. And he hadn't been my father for about 10 years, and so I lost him 10 years before he died, and so I accepted that loss. And so when the body actually died, that wasn't a big deal to me.
Because you already dealt with it. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah,
I think the main problem with my parents is they've lied to me and taken advantage of me so much that there's conflicting feelings. I love them because they're my parents, but I despise them for the things that they've done to me. It's kind of confusing, but it
yeah,
still hurts to think they're going to go.
yeah. This is something that I don't carry the weight of. I don't love any of my family members just because they're my family members. In fact, I'm very, very indifferent about the vast majority of them because I don't really know them. And even the ones that I do know, i.e., my real blood, my two sisters and brother, which came from my mother, then as adults we've become so distant for the greater part in any case. Just because they're my siblings, should I carry some weight in relation to that? I don't see it. And should I go round and see them because they're my brothers and sisters, even though we don't get on and there's nothing in common, and I don't really like most of them? I don't. I've never seen. I've never got my head around why people think about like that. Because what happens is, Mario, people traumatise themselves because it's your brother and your sister. Well, it's my brother and it's my sister, and I shouldn't feel like this, and I should do this, and I should do that. All these impositions of what they should do just because you came out the same vagina. Well, I really just don't see it like that. And there are people outside of my family who I would be far more upset if they died. And so I think we have to get some sort of a reality on the strings and attachment that maybe society has borne upon us. You know, your
Yeah,
parents, they're both very old, they've done atrocious things to you, you don't speak to them, you don't get along with them in any case, and yet you're going to be feeling out of sorts, or you don't know how you're going to be feeling. And I think probably, reading between the lines, this is the greatest issue, because you've not addressed that, you've not said to yourself, you've not given yourself the scenario when one of them dies. Which one is it liable to be, and how's it going to be, and you know, how am I going to feel about it standing at the grave, and this, that, and the other, and wondering to yourself, should there have been something that I said? Damn, she's gone now, and I'll never be able to ask her about this. I'll never be able to present this to her. And this is one of the issues, that because they're gone, then there is unresolved stuff. But if you've got everything resolved, if you've asked your parents about all the stuff that you've ever wanted to know, and whether you've got an answer or not, you've come to a certain impasse, it's a case of, well, you can't do any more with them. And so if they were to die tomorrow, then it wouldn't really make any difference, because if they lived another 10 years, I wouldn't extract any more information out of them.
this is very true. Very true. And I haven't gone through that, like you said, I haven't gone through the scenario in my head like that. And I usually do that with everything. Maybe I just didn't want to go there.
Yeah.
But that's definitely
Curious.
something I'm going to do. It's definitely
So,
something I'm going to do because it helps me. Even when I was doing construction, I would build something in my mind the day before I would even get to the site, so that I had already done it.
yes,
So
and
that
we do this with many things, don't we? Particularly in business. I mean, this is the whole premise of a business plan. And so we write everything down meticulously, and we're looking at all the eventualities that could make manifest, so we can protect ourselves against some, and we can look forward to the manifestation of certain others. And so, why don't we do this with people around us? You see, I've said in lots of videos in relation to the relationships that we have with people whom we care about, make sure they know you care. Make sure you've said all the things that you feel in your heart, because if there comes a stage when there's no longer that facility, you're going to carry the weight of that. And so if you reveal to them your undying love, or your great friendship, then you've alleviated some pressure from yourself, and you've bestowed it onto the other person, and you know that when they died, they knew that. And so what more could be done?
yeah, I guess that's the most important thing. I guess I did what I could do then. I just need to I just need to visualize it a little bit.
Yeah, this is why I'm so intent on communicating, because when you have a relationship with somebody whom you have a good level of communication, you can get a resolve on all these things. And so, whatever there was which needed to be said, it has been said. And there's certain people, which the vast majority of people, whom you cannot have this level of communication with. And for instance, if I wanted to speak to my sister about, death, oh no, 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 don't talk about that, don't talk about that, because she's got some sort of superstition that if you talk about it, then you'll make it manifest. And I'm like, well, if you never talk about the eventuality, then there's lots of things that can't be said then. And what we do is we live in denial and avoidance. And then all of a sudden, when the eventuality comes about, then it's took us by surprise. And it's taken away the facility that we would have liked to have had. And so communication is the greatest thing that we've got as human beings, and I just believe that the vast majority of us are not using it to anything like the degree that we should.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I have so much trouble finding someone to talk to. that I can relate with and that can relate with me.
Yeah.
Uh, it seems like people just like they hear what I say and then they regurgitate like the exact opposite. It's very opposing.
Yeah. You see, one thing that Paul and I have, which is absolutely invaluable, and we'd never known the like of it until we met. And then when we met, we spent hundreds of hours in communication, and we would meet up on days, and from the moment we met to the moment we would depart, it often could be like 7 hours. We would never ever stop talking, and there would be nothing that we were inhibited about addressing. We wanted to know everything, and we wanted to run by everything about everybody to this individual. And so he would tell me all about his family and some of the lovers, and I would tell him about mine, and all the issues that we've had, and because we could never talk to them about it, and we're carrying the weight of unresolved stuff, and so we wanted to get a resolve on it, and so via communicating with each other we got a resolve on most of the stuff. And this is what I'm really trying to generate in the Ascending Awake and Brave. I've been saying for the past 3 or 4 months what I'm trying to do, and now the site is up and running. Still, very, very few people are doing it. And I have to ask myself on a constant basis, what on earth is it that inhibits people so much that they cannot use their tongue?
Well, I can remember what it was with me. It was fear.
Fear
I was
of?
scared. I don't know. I was scared to come out here and talk to you. Remember?
Yeah,
I couldn't do it. I don't know why.
yeah.
Then I just did it.
And you just did, and all the people that come forward, they've had similar inhibitions and fears, and they did it, and most of them continue to do it. And so the fear, and of course the fear has so many connotations to it.
But
That this,
why?
yeah, why? Um, Possibly because, you see, nobody want to hear this, but possibly because everybody is too narcissistic. And nobody wants to hear the real truth about themselves. They only want to be projecting onto other people. They don't want to communicate in a deep, meaningful way to find out the reality about yourself. Because being an artist, you don't want to hear that. You've got your own illusion of how you are, and that's how things are going to stay. You see, if people weren't narcissistic, then they would be open, and there would be an acceptance of hearing stuff about themselves. And I've said to my viewers, I said, you can tell me anything, you can level anything at me, and some of it I want to engage with, and some of it I won't. But if you level stuff at me, then at least it gives me an opportunity to ask myself, is that true about me? Is there something that I'm missing? And so this is one of the things that's an asset to what I'm doing here. Speaking from my heart out into the world, and then other people will tell you what they think you are. And so you can learn from that. And I've always encouraged it, you see, and this is how I've always had my relationships with friends. They've always been inquiring, and I've said in videos that none of my friends are going to be exempt from me knowing as much as I possibly can, and I will see if there's things that you're hiding, I will see if there's things that you're burying, and I will want to seek out what it is, not only for my own curiosity, but as a therapist, I know that If you're hiding something, then it's unresolved issues. And so if I can help you to resolve them, then I'm doing you a service, even though you may not like it initially.
Yeah, I think that learning from other people's insight into your life is very valuable. Yeah, because they're seeing things that you're not seeing about yourself.
Yeah,
It's kind of like when I was working on a job site. Sometimes I would have to walk across the street and look at it from a different angle, get a different view to see what's going on. You got to get a
yeah,
different perspective from somebody else sometimes.
yeah. And this is the thing, when you have relationships with people, then they will bring out a certain something in you that, ugh, you see, when we have friends, invariably we will act somewhat differently to each friend. And you look at that and you go, why is that? Well, because certain friends bring out a certain something, and they don't lead to a facility or freedom for you to express yourself in a certain way, or it's not that sort of a friendship. And so if you've got 5 friends and you go out with the 5 friends, well, you probably go and watch football with one, but you don't go and watch football with the others. And then you can get all kind of like boisterous and a bit aggressive and tribal, the Reds or the Blues or all this silly nonsense. And you can have a friend who's a businessman, and he would never ever see that side of you, that ridiculous sort of innate tribalism that we've got. You'd be expressing something different. And so this is why I say, and I made a video about it today. Can I believe a single word I say? Because what am I doing when I'm engaging with you now? I'm acting in a certain way, I'm conveying in a certain way, I'm thinking in a certain way. But then when I speak with somebody else, then it's invariably very different. And so if we have a whole entourage of people who we interact with on a close basis, then you can see how much we're going to learn about ourselves, because we can be free in so many different ways with so many different people. You are the same person. You've experienced all of those facets, but each one of those friends, they've only experienced one or two or a few of those facets, you see. So they don't know this person. They only know those 3 facets.
Right.
Unless you
So
had
we're only showing them like our facet that matches their reality.
yeah, I guess whatever similar experience they've got, you can have some sort of a confluence with that, and then you've got this common ground, this affinity. And this is an issue that lots of people have with this awakening, because you've had relationships with many people until you've become awoke. And then when you've become awoke, your perspective has changed greatly. You try to engage with what you think is the same people, but they turn out not to be the same people, because you're not the same person. And so therefore, when you engage with them, you're getting a different response. And you're like, what the fuck's happened here? I thought you was like this, or I thought you was like that. Well, no, it's just because you never poked them in a certain way to get that certain response. And so this is why I say then, we are a different person every single second, minute, hour of the day, and a different person with every single person that we're ever going to encounter, because they will bring out certain facets of us. So you know yourself, meeting people whom you had a relationship before you was awoke, and now you're awoke, and then you will say something, and all of a sudden you'll see a face, you'll see an agitation, you'll see a different change of energy, and you'll go, what the fuck? I thought I knew this person. You're dealing with a
Mm.
different person, because you're a different person. Your vibration's different, so therefore it's not conducive with their vibration anymore.
I know exactly what you're talking about because I have friends that are like that. Were my friends in that aspect. We were on such the same page that we were almost finishing each other's sentences all the time, and we were always thinking the same things almost, and now it's like we don't connect at all.
Yeah. And that person, I would think, is probably the same outlook. You see, if your outlook doesn't change drastically, then you're going to pretty well remain the same creature, aren't you? But when you are, it's like people that go to war. They go to war, they come back, they're changed. And there's no way on this planet is anybody not going to be able to recognize that. And so, therefore, this is why they become depressed, they lose all their friends, because they are carrying an experience which they can't share outside of their forces colleagues. And so this is why invariably they belong to these clubs where they meet up, to reminisce about the past, 'cause it's the only time really they'll feel entirely comfortable having shared these amazing experiences. Not necessarily good when I say amazing, but amazing. And it causes great difficulty. And we all know, those of us that are awake, that all of a sudden, it's like my family. This is why I say about my family, I'm indifferent, because I was very, very close to my eldest sister up until 10 years ago, when I started to live abroad. And she continued to do exactly the same in her life that she's been doing forever. And my life has been all around the world, meeting all different sorts of people, doing different things. And of course I've changed, but she cannot accept that I'm not Aaron anymore. No, you're Aaron. I knew you from, when you're 2 years old and when I was just born. And no, you don't know me now. How can you know me when you haven't been privy to the last 10 years experience that I've had?
Well, not only that, every cell in your body is different. You don't have any of the cells are it's not even the same. You're not even the same Aaron cellularly.
No. And yet they don't want to accept that you're a different person. And so I can't communicate. And sometimes I will speak to my sister, and she's the only one of my family members, other than my daughter, obviously, that I communicate with. And it's very, very brief, and it's only because she's so endearing and she loves me so much, or she loves the notion of what was me before. She loves the notion of the experiences that we shared together. And I know that that's what she loves. But I can't tell her about anything that I'm doing. And you know what? She isn't interested in a single thing that I'm doing. All she ever says is, as long as you're all right, as long as you're all right. I've been doing this, I'm not interested in what you've been doing, as long as you're all right. And so I say to her then, well, it seems like you're not interested in me as a human or as your brother. The only thing you're interested in is my preservation. Because if I was to die, then you would feel a loss. And so it's entirely selfish. Because you are hanging on to all these memories. Because you don't have any new ones of any significance. And you're always looking back. And this is the thing we'll find with family members, that they won't come to meet you when you're an adult. They'll want to stay in the past, and they won't have any level of acceptance for the creature that you are now. And so this is why I can't have anything to do with them.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I'm definitely in agreement with that. My sister's the same way with me too.
In what respect?
As far as bringing up when we were children and younger, and our experiences from the past, and she hangs on to that like it's still me.
Yeah. And
Just, I guess it's all right. It makes her happy, I guess.
Yeah, and they hang on to that, but I suppose that she doesn't really want to have any allegiance to what you are these days.
Not really, no. The only thing that she's ever connected with me with on all this stuff that I'm looking into is the chemtrails, because she sees them over her school where she works.
Mm.
And I told her what they're about, what's in them, what could be in them, theories of what's in them, what they do to us. And then she's like, "They're spraying over my school," And that was
Yeah,
the end of that. She didn't go into any more. She left it at that. But she did realize, what's going on a little bit. But then the book's shut.
yeah. So there's something that I wanted to speak to you about, and I mentioned it to you some days ago. And the subject is, in view of your disposition with your migraines and your back pain,
Yeah,
you you carry in um, negative energy. I mean, you can't term this energy positive if it causes you so much stress and pain. And so the migraines, they're a form of negative energy because they ruin your life, don't they? They stop you from doing so many things.
yeah. I'm actually scared of the next one starting.
Yeah.
You know.
And also your back pain, because you've broken your back, then that is a constant issue, which also stops you from doing many things. And so I wanted to pose the question that, do you think it's a good idea to decapacitate yourself further via looking into all these conspiracies or known things that are going on in America and around the world, like the chemtrails and like the false flags and all the shit that governments are do? Because do you think you can afford to carry any more negative energy?
No, I think my cup's pretty full, and I'm really not able to find anything new. I'm
Yeah,
not finding out anything new, really. Once in a great while, I'll find out something new. But other than that, I'm just trying to bring awareness to other people,
yeah.
and hopefully that'll make some kind of a change for the positive, I'm hoping.
But how do you feel it's affecting yourself?
Well, I definitely can feel myself having to process things when I learn something new. Like I just watched a video about, oh geez, how some people were cutting the arms and legs off of children and slicing their throats and bleeding them out, and slicing their abdomen open and then sitting on them and letting their guts come out of them. I got to process stuff like that.
Yes, and so why do you do it to yourself?
I don't know. I just have this. I can't help it. I want to know everything, I guess.
But that's not everything. That's just the dark stuff. Why don't you look into lighter stuff?
Oh, I do. That's why I'm into all my plants and all trying to get nature around me and feeding the bees and feeding the birds and
Yeah,
turning my little piece of desert here into an oasis. That keeps me happy.
yeah. You see, the thing is about thoughts. We are our thoughts, and whatever we think about, we bring about. And so, if we immerse ourselves in this negative stuff, then we know that it affects us. And Paul and I, we've gone through this so many times. And sometimes a new conspiracy will come up or a new false flag, and we'll spend a bit of time on that. But that's about as far as it goes, because there's no point in delving, because it just gets deeper and deeper and darker. And what happens is your mind goes deeper and darker. And when your thoughts are deep and dark, then of course that affects your physiology, it affects your health. And so it's not a good arena to be in. And so we steer ourselves clear from that, and we keep a very, very varied intake of information. Because if you water it down, then you don't carry the weight of it, and you don't contemplate it too much, and your thoughts are not spent dwelling in that. And so therefore it is more conducive to a happier life.
I agree. I've been trying to tell people to be the change they see.
Yeah.
That's what I've been doing with myself as well, trying to be the change that I want to see. In fact, I just took out some recycling before I talked to you, and I saw my neighbor she's got the same flu that I had, and she sounded horrible. And I was trying to give her some advice because I know I researched what I needed to do. I cured myself. I cured my girlfriend. I thought I was dying. I was spitting up blood.
Right.
This lady won't take any of my advice. She was so happy that she started antibiotics last night, though.
Well, that's the mindset, isn't it?
Yeah, it's boggling because I know I can help her with some cheap, easy things, but she won't listen.
Yeah.
And in the same breath that she doesn't want to listen to me, I can't breathe, Mario. I'm thinking to myself, and no, I actually said it out loud. I said, get the peppermint oil. It'll help you breathe better. She just blew it off.
Mm.
I don't even know how to take that. Is that what you call a husk?
Well, yeah. Deeply programmed people. They think anything outside of what has been presented to them in the mainstream is quackery, and the mainstream bastardize and pervert alternative medicine as quackery because it's not in their best interest to give it any credit. And so it's the mindset of people, and this is the whole thing when you try to speak about something outside of the regular paradigm, then they don't have the capacity or receptors for it. They simply haven't created the receptors. If you picture within our mind, there are these DMT receptors, and
Right.
doctors and scientists are speculated, well, what's the deal here? For millions of years, these DMT receptors have been in our brains. They've been there waiting. What is so important about this DMT? That the brain has created the receptors, and they've been lying dormant maybe for at least a few thousand years, maybe say 10,000 years ago, then DMT products were far more prolific, and maybe for hundreds of thousands of years the human race was taking DMT, and this is why our brain has such a prolific amount of these receptors. And so if you have the receptors for something at any stage in your life, when you take DMT, whoo, your body wants it. Your body is completely rigged up to deal with it. But because people have been so highly programmed and indoctrinated and brainwashed, then they have never been encouraged to have receptors for things outside of the regular paradigm. And so they haven't been created. And that's why the information, the words that you speak, they befuddle them. They're bouncing all around, and it's kind of like when you've got like a female and a male, like in cells. You've got various shapes of cells, and then one, it will come to connect with the other one. Well, it's like whatever connection we are conveying when we verbalize certain things, they don't have the receptors, and so it's kind of like they can't connect.
Well, that makes total sense because she looked totally bewildered.
Yeah,
She was like, "Oh,
and
thanks for giving me the plant, and take care."
yeah, bye now. And then she'll be going back to her old man saying, that guy, he's wacko.
Yeah, I know it.
Oh, dear me. Yes. And so communication then. This is the spice of life, I feel. And it doesn't matter with what sort of relationship you have with anybody. If you can't communicate, then it's a bad one.
You know what, Aaron? I have better conversations with the homeless people around here than with most other people.
Yeah. Because the homeless people are outside the box.
They have an open mind.
Yeah.
They don't condemn me for things that I say. They actually take things that I say into consideration.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think that's how they ended up in that position because they're outside the box. They didn't want to be inside the box. They didn't want to be part of the system. So there they are.
Yeah. And throughout their lives, they've been rejected by the vast majority of society. And if they never had any skills whereby people would accept them for their skills, even though they thought they were cranky and weird. You see, who wants to accept somebody if they don't have skills but they're cranky and weird? Well, there's no benefit to anybody. So therefore, they just dismiss them as being cranky and weird. But if you're cranky and weird, kind of like Philip K. Dick, but you can write brilliantly interesting novels, then people will tolerate you. They'll invite you to their party and all this sort of thing. But if you were cranky and weird and you just said weird shit and you never produced any books or films or anything that got the appraisal of certain sectors of society, then people would just goof you off. And so you can see then that these people that are street people, maybe they had skills, but they'd never had the drive. And so that's why they've ended there at that lowest rung on the ladder.
Well, the last one that I talked with, I gave him some hoodies because, he sleeps outside at night. It's cold here. Even though it's the desert, still gets cold at night.
Mm.
I gave him some warm clothes to wear. We had a lot of conversations, and I told him about my life stories, and he said, "You're making me look at myself and wonder why I'm in this position because you've been through more than me."
Right.
And he really gained a lot from talking with me, and then I gained a lot from speaking with him. But it was really sad. The man even cried because he's like, I was just craving human interaction so badly. And I was just out cleaning up. I was picking up garbage, and I just, ended up walking over to him and started talking to him. And he said, "You have no idea how long that I've been wanting to talk with somebody.
Mm.
Nobody will talk with these people
Yeah.
because they feel like they're beneath them or something, I guess. I don't know."
Yeah. And so why don't they flock together? Birds of a feather.
He does have one friend that I see him with, but I don't think that he has like the same intellectual capacity, so they don't really click.
Yeah. Mm.
But a lot of them seem pretty intelligent.
Yeah. And this is what I've always made a habit of is speaking to these people. And the reason why people don't speak to them because they're afraid of them. They're afraid for many reasons. They're afraid of being embarrassed. They're afraid of feeling obliged to give, and so they don't want to do that, even though it could be something small like a couple of dollars or $5, which would, buy a decent meal. They wouldn't want to do that, and also the thing is that then is that level of connection going to be expected on an ongoing basis? When if you got like chalk and cheese and never the twain shall meet, how does that happen? How does that work? You see, if you've got some guy sitting in the doorway with a blanket pulled over his head, and one day you just had a few beers and you grab the pizza and you've eaten half the pizza, you're on your way home, you're feeling full, and you think, well, I'm going to throw this fucking pizza away. But then you see this guy, and so you go, hey guy, do you want this half of a pizza? And the guy goes, yeah, sure. And then you start to engage, and then it turns out that, wow, this guy, he's all right. He's quite a sensible sort. But do you continue with that level of engagement? Because the next day you're not going to be pissed. The next day you're not going to have half a pizza that you're going to throw away anyway. And so you're going to consider that, well, it's probably going to cost me every time I engage with this person. Because even if he's not expecting it, then you're going to feel guilty because you know he needs it. Where do you draw the line? And this is the difficulty, isn't it? You see, I got a little bit matey with a homeless guy around here. And I would see him on the beach every third or fourth day, something like that. And he would always wave, and I'd go over and I'd sit down and I'd speak with him for 15 minutes. But the conversation was always the same and it wasn't going anywhere. And so it kind of dried up. And I would give him a fiver. And then I thought to myself, well, there's no point in continuing this relationship because there's nothing to be derived from it. And every time I go and sit with him, then am I going to be paying him? And if I see him every 3 or 4 days, then, am I going to perpetuate that? Well, why would I choose him over and above anybody else? And so what happened is that I didn't want to sit down and engage with him because he wasn't that interesting. And I thought, well, I don't mind, giving him a fiver here and there, but I don't want to make a habit of it. And I don't want every time I walk on the beach, hey, Aaron. And I'm like, oh, here's that guy again. So you just stop communicating. And you see him and you just walk on. Sometimes you go, okay, wave, but walk on, it's over,
Well, I don't. I have a Walmart parking lot behind where I live here, and there's always security guards back there. So they're only going to allow those people around for maybe a day or two out of the week or so many hours a day, and then they're going to tell them to get the heck out of here.
Yeah.
So I've only got a small window where I can actually communicate with these people back there.
Oh, okay. So therefore, then you've got some level of protection, which is something that you've not created.
Exactly. In fact, the last time I was talking with the guy, I kept looking over my shoulder, and the security guard was watching me the whole time. Just to see what was going on, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm being watched.
And obviously, the local police and security, they're aware of these guys, and they do watch them, they do monitor them, they see where they are and how many days or how much time they spend in one particular region, because nobody wants them to be, permanently there, and so therefore they'll keep moving them on.
Well, like the bus stop. At the bus stop, they have cameras. So when I go to Little Caesars and buy a large pizza and go sit down with the homeless people at the bus stop, and we're sitting there talking and eating, they're probably watching us at the police station on the camera.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I don't really care. I'm just there to make small talk and make somebody feel better.
Yeah. And so what other things have you been looking into?
Well, I had a thought earlier about you were talking about DMT. I had a thought about the DMT. I don't know how real it could be. Maybe the DMT is the portal of, let's say, the soul to the brain.
Mm.
Because I've been
Yeah.
trying to figure that out for a few days now. I'm thinking about the connection from the soul to the brain. There's got to be some kind of conduit going on there, some kind of, there's got to be some sort of connection, right?
Yeah, there's definitely a connection because there's information that you appear to be given. You get messages, and whether it's shrooms or regular DMT, something of this nature, you seem to be communicating with a higher self, and so it seems to be opening up a portal into the higher self, which seems so familiar, and it's very bizarre.
But yeah, I've been thinking about what kind of connection is there between our brain and our, let's say, call it an eternal soul. That's what I've been thinking about lately.
Do you think there is an internal soul?
I believe that we have an energy, yeah, and energy can't be destroyed. So,
Yeah. See, there's lots of varying speculations about where this higher self or consciousness is, and there's lots of people that speculate that we are only transceivers. We're transmitting and transceiving certain energy from somewhere else, and the video I made today was in relation to the two aspects of what it is to be a human being, and I was talking about that there's at least two us, whether you call them spirits or consciousness or whatever, because we've got two halves of the brain. They think independently,
mhm.
and the only reason that they work together is due to the corpus callosum, which is the portal of communication between the two. But if you cut the corpus callosum, they work independently and they don't work together, and they have separate consciousness. So there's two consciousness there, and so this is why we have this dichotomy and this way of thinking whereby it seems contradictory a lot of the time. And so if that is the case then, which it very much appears to be, then there isn't one entity alone residing within us, communicating with us. There's two. And we've seen this depicted throughout the whole world. And it's depicted in religions. It's depicted as the good guy and the bad guy. There's a dichotomy. And so there's these two, and the two are always looking for a compromise. They're looking how they can live with each other. And it's due to this understanding that we've had about the brain in consciousness over these thousands of years. That's why we've created religions, because it's the closest that we can get to speaking parable about what actually is going on in the human mind and brain. But if you say that, oh, over here you're the good guy, and over there you've got the bad guy, and they're going to be trying to tempt you. They're going to be trying to manipulate you and have you do this and have you do that. Well, that's just the different hemispheres of the brain. We all get these conflicting voices. I want to go and get pissed and be a pain in the ass. And then the other side is, oh, do you really want to go and do that? Think about the ramifications. What if you get hurt or hurt somebody, or what if you get arrested, or do you really want to abuse your body like this? Okay. And so this is what we're trying to do, isn't it, all the time? We're trying to get some sort of a confluence going whereby we can appease one another, live with one another. Two heads on the same beast.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense because when you push somebody over the edge and they explode in your face, they've lost control of that one part of themselves.
Yeah, they've. They're in denial of the mediator or the karma aspect of themselves, and they're fully immersed into the other side. And so this is it. But you see, if you go the other way, and if you become so placid and meek and humble, well, that's not a good state to be in either. Because all that's going to happen to you is you're going to be manipulated and controlled all of your life, and so therefore you're going to have a bit of a sting in your tail too.
Yeah. Otherwise,
So
you're going to get walked.
so we need the both. And when you start looking into it, and you assess this information from all the various facets of knowledge. You look at it from a philosophical perspective, you look at it from a psychological perspective, you look at it from a religious perspective, you look at it from a spiritual perspective, you look at it from all these perspectives, and it all comes down to the same thing, basically, that there are two opposing forces. And and that's what life's about, isn't it? It's about the yin and the yang. We've got the yin and the yang. We are the yin and the yang. And this is why we project this yin and yang onto the whole world, because we are it.
I was just talking about that the other day. So I don't remember who was saying it now. Somebody was talking about why would God let all these horrible things happen to these little children and blah, 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 and why has there got to be so much evil and bad in the world? I said, well, if there wasn't evil and bad, how would you know what the heck good is? How can there be good? How can there be good without bad? How could there not be nice without mean? How could there be cold without hot? I mean,
Yeah.
you got to think realistically, right?
And it seems to me then, if there's some sort of a game going on here, if there's some sort of a purpose, if we are here to play this game, what's the goal of the game? It's not to get rich. It's not to land grab. It's not to exercise power over people, because what does that do to the essence of what it is to be a human being? It doesn't give any growth. It doesn't put you in touch with the higher aspects of what it is to be a human being. It keeps you detached. It keeps you living in the mundane. It keeps you living in the material. And again, you see, this is another dichotomy. Half of what we do here is material, but there's another half, if we tap into, that isn't material. And so I think that's the whole focal point of the game. We've got to realise that there's two worlds going on here, and we have to find a compromise with the two worlds. If you look at it this way, we've got the abstract world going on, and then we've got the subjective world going on. They are completely different worlds. There is stuff out in the abstract, sure, okay, but it's all perceived from the interior. And so what we actually do is then, well, we are navigating around the abstraction of this world, but what's navigating, it's a subjective thing that's navigating. It's the thoughts which are non-material. And so you've got non-material navigating us around the material. And so again, you've got the dichotomy, and you've got this compromise which has to take place. And so when you get a grasp that you are actually living in two worlds, it is absolutely not one world, because this thing is detached from the material world. The consciousness isn't a part of the material world, and yet it seems to operate within it. How can something which isn't material operate within something which is material?
That's kind of what I've been getting at. How is our consciousness interacting with our brain and with our body?
Yeah, and that's the thing, you see, because if you've got something that isn't material, then it can't affect the material. But we think it does. And this is what I'm sort of getting to more and more each day. It has to be an illusion because how is it possible? So, there isn't a single scientist on the planet, Mario, that tells us how it happens. They are just assuming, they're just speculating. And it's because they don't know, it's kind of like, oh fuck, well, I mean, give me one free miracle and we'll explain the rest. And that's what they've done. And so they're assuming that there's a brain and the brain is thinking about all this stuff and it's in an operation and everything. But where's the information coming from? Consciousness. Where's consciousness? Can't find it. And so if you say then, well, if you can't find this thing called consciousness, you think you can find the material world. But what we know about the material world is that is illusion, because there is no material world. And so what conclusion can we form then? If the scientists in our current paradigm tell us that there is no material world, and yet we swear blind that there is, but let's just say, well, there is no material world, and this thing called consciousness, it isn't material either. So you've got two things then that are non-material. Only one of them seems to be an energy. And we don't know what this energy is. It's like the Tesla energy. It's like the dark matter that's all around us, supposedly. They call it dark because they haven't got a clue what it is. But they believe that there's something, and it's energy, and yet it can't be measured. And so this consists of 96% of the universe. This dark energy, dark matter, which cannot be measured, only speculated about with math. There's 4% that can be measured to a degree, but when you look at it very, very closely, even that becomes non-measurable because it comes in and out of existence, and we don't know what it is that is actually making manifest into material stuff. And so it all gets really very questionable. And so I think if you're going to err on the side of caution as to what this thing is, then you're going to have to say it's just imagination. Pure imagination, all of it.
Scientists they've been pulling everything apart so much that they don't even know what's going on anymore.
Yeah. They never did know what was going on. They only made speculations.
Yeah, they always think they know what's going on, and then they find something different, and they find something different.
And then they realise that they don't know what's going on. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was said in the time of Isaac Newton, when he discovered the nature of gravity, that somebody said then, oh, well, that's it. We've discovered everything about the universe. There's nothing else to be discovered. You know, completely preposterous. And so with each new passing year now, what's happening, the technology is becoming so super duper advanced, it's absolutely bewildering. And this is why then we've got people like Elon Musk and the like really crying out a warning about this technology that we are piecing together. We keep sticking a bit more together. We don't know when there's going to come a point when all the stuff we've stuck together is going to become autonomous. You know, it's going to achieve this singularity. And when it achieves the singularity, then it does what it wants, and it's going to take complete mastery over whatever this is in this dimension. And so,
then you got the scientists who say that all matter breaks when they break down matter to its smallest parts, that it matches a computer program. There's like no difference between a computer program and what we're living.
well, I mean, if you look at the regular computer, then you've got binary, you've got on and off, you've got zeros and ones, and that's how they were constructed, and they thought that that's how the universe was constructed, also written in binary. But now with the advent of the quantum computer, then those switches are on and off at the same time. A zero is a one and a one is a zero, and so they counter each other out. And this is something that is incomprehensible, but it, it just takes us into a whole different realm.
Definitely.
And
Kind
from
of.
that, all they can say that is what they can speculate is that what we seem to be living in is only a probability, and every single thing about this universe is only probable, and from 1 millisecond to the next, everything is just a probability, and there's no reality as such.
That's pretty deep.
Yeah, it's losing the vast majority of mankind, because there's no way that we can compute this sort of thinking. That the whole Schrodinger's cat thing, that something is and something isn't, and it's all going on at the same time, and there's no time and space. And where do we go from there? I mean, you see, look, quantum physicists have known for 120 years that there's no matter, and yet we insist that there is. And we keep working within a realm that seems like there is matter. I mean, I'm speaking in a microphone, and I'm looking onto a computer, and I'm sitting on a chair. And so, well, am I crazy imagining all this? What's going on? Well, there's something very, very peculiar going on. Something like a dream going on. Because if all this stuff isn't corporeal, it doesn't have any matter to it, then what the fuck? I must be dreaming, right?
Yeah, because we're mostly not even here.
Yeah,
We're mostly empty space. What is it? 99.999% empty space.
yeah. That's the well. You see, this is the math for the atom, and that's what they say. But even this bit that isn't empty space, it's an indefinable energy, and so there's no matter to it. All they can do is when they measure where the main focal point of the energy of an atom is, they can just guess through probability.
Maybe, maybe we're just all the thought of a higher being.
Yeah, and it's absolutely amazing, the complexity of it and the paradoxical nature of it, that I think it's seriously outside our thinking ability to be able to this code. And that's why it's so special, and that's why it's so genius. Because everywhere we look, it's like being inside a labyrinth, and you've got all these alleyways leading here and leading there, and it gives us the illusion that all these alleyways lead to somewhere. But in actual fact, they don't lead to anywhere. They just keep going round and round and round in the labyrinth. And so this is what our thought pattern is. Our thought pattern gives us the illusion that we can solve problems. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to be solved because there's nothing to solve. It's only an illusion of things to be solved.
It's definitely an illusion. I agree with that too, because, for instance, let's say I go for a walk on the mountain and I find a cave. Well, that cave didn't exist to me until I just saw it. Now it just
Yeah,
became part of my reality.
yeah. And this is like everything. Nothing exists until it becomes a part of your reality. And this has been what's been speculated by philosophers for thousands of years. Does the world actually exist? When we're not observing it. And this is the whole premise behind the double slit experiment. They say, well, no, it doesn't exist. It's only probability. until consciousness observes it. And so, in a deep, deep forest, say like, several miles in the forest, there's trees and there's bugs and there's all this stuff which is supposedly there. But is there anything there until it's observed by consciousness?
It's definitely a hard question that I've actually thought about quite a bit, because if you're not there to witness it, how do you know it's really there?
Yeah.
And sure, you can go on Google Earth and witness it, but then you're witnessing it through a camera.
Yeah, and so if you like are on the extremities of the Amazon jungle and you believe that say like there's a 50-mile diameter of this jungle, and 25 miles in there's this jungle that nobody's ever been, then it's reasonable to assume that if you can measure the parameters of the jungle, you can say, well, we've measured it and it's like, it's 50 miles wide and, it's X miles long. And so there's a centre to it. But there's only ever going to be a centre once it's been experienced. Otherwise, it's just going to be a probable fact, isn't it? It's probably, there's probable trees in there. I mean, there's trees all the way around the outside, and so it's probably going to continue like that right until the centre. But there's no foregone conclusion that that's the case. Again, it's only probability. We may get to the centre of this 50-mile diameter forest and find a fucking iceberg there. We don't know,
Right.
do we?
We won't know until we witness it.
Yeah.
Just like some of these experiments that they do, where they can't even be in the same room or in the vicinity of the experiment, because the particles won't behave the same way if they're being observed.
Consciousness is going to change it. This is the whole double split experiment. And so when that happens, then you have to know that it is consciousness that is creating it. Because if consciousness can change the outcome of an experiment, then by making it manifest, because until consciousness is observing, then it's only probability, it's only a wave function. But when consciousness is observing it, or when there's a measuring device, something with an intelligence behind it, which is actually observing it, when it's being observed, then that's when it seems to, this is what they call the whole collapse of the wave function into a particle. It seems that there's a law. If something is observing the probability, then it has to become something. And
it doesn't become something. It's not really something until you observe it, for sure, because you don't know.
Yeah. And so then this is the whole thing, like, does a tree make a sound if it falls in the forest when there's no one there to hear it? Well, somebody would say, well, of course it does. It's just that you're not there to hear it. Well, I'll say, like, well, let's have a look then. Let's have a look at that closely. If a tree falls in the centre of a forest, does it make a sound? It only makes a sound if there is a receiver to receive the vibration which is being created by the friction which that falling tree. You see, certain animals, they're going to have all different varieties of mechanisms for receiving this vibration. i.e. a snake, it will feel the vibration. Its ears, it's got tiny, tiny little piss holes which are very ineffective. How it navigates and feels the world about it is via vibration and scent on the tongue. And so there's different mechanisms, isn't there? And so if there's no creature within that forest which has the capacity to feel vibration, then there's no sound, because sound is only a concept. And the concept is derived out of a vibration which we can measure given the right circumstances. You see, if you've got something which is like very, very high pitched, like a dog's whistle, then if you say to somebody, am I making a sound when I blow this dog's whistle? And you can't hear it. Yeah, you can't hear it, so you go, no. And yet the fucking dog's ears are up like this, and it's meow, 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 meow. So something's going on. So there is a sound, you
Right.
see. And so this is the whole premise of everything. The very, very narrow parameters of what we can perceive about this world. It's extremely tiny. And so just bewildering, really. Absolutely bewildering. We haven't got a single clue. And I speculate that the human being, if it isn't a part of some game, some greater overlording intelligence that's created us, if it's just something, well, it's not even just, but if it's something that has evolved, then it's a mutation. We think we're special. The only reason we think we're special is because we've got the cognitive ability to be able to question what we are and question what the universe is. And therefore, we think that we must be special to have that facility. And so, therefore, we create gods then, don't we? But if we're just a mutation, like Darwinism suggests, everything else is a mutation. So, why should we be any different? What, we're made by God? And nothing else is made by God? Or why have we got this consciousness? Oh, because you see, what we do is we try to invent stuff then, don't we? We go, oh, well, space aliens came down. Other intelligence, they came down and they spliced monkeys and now they've created the human being. Because we cannot accept certain things. We cannot accept that we're just a mutation, there's no purpose to us whatsoever, over and above a slug or an amoeba or anything of this nature. We can't accept that, so therefore we have to keep speculating, inventing.
Well, you're making me think of the Emerald tablets.
Yeah, the uh, Trismegistus, Hermes
How
Trismegistus.
how when they show how when the somebody showed up with laser weapons when we were still cave people and
Yeah.
told us, we could be civil, taught us to be civil.
So you've got that Atlantean thing going on because Hermes Trismegistus, he was an Atlantean. And at that particular time, there was supposed to be these gods, which was this light which resided beneath the ground, and that's all it basically was. It was a light, but it could have some level of communication. Apparently, it communicated with Hermes, and at some stage, it made him immortal. And so then Hermes became Thoth in Egyptian mythology, and possibly even Jesus. This mythological figure, which it keeps going forward. But not only if you look at the Atlanteans, then if you look at the Sumerians, then we've got the Anunnaki, where you've got a different variety of species or intelligence coming down from the stars and splicing man, genetically to make slaves. There's so many different varieties of this, and the human being is an amazing source of imagination, and it can imagine a whole myriad of things, and via the imagination, that's how we create, because thoughts create. And if you look at the Bible, it says, in the beginning was the Word. In the beginning was the Word. The spoken vibration in the beginning was vibration. That's
Right.
basically. And so in the beginning, quantum physics, then that's just vibration. It's energy, which is just vibrating. So
I
many
was just
different.
talking
Sorry?
on a live stream. I was just talking about with somebody on a live stream
Yeah.
before we. Go ahead, finish. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was good. And so out of the Word, God's spoken Word, came the material world. And so what do? We have an imagination, And we can't create anything out of our imagination other than figments of our imagination. How we create, we speak and we tell. I say to you, listen, Mario, I've got an idea. I want to build a boat, and let me draw it for you. And so this is how it's going to be together. And then we have a level of communication, don't we? And so out of the spoken word, the vibration, that's what creates. And so we then are doing exactly what the God is supposed to have done. We are creating via our spoken word, via our spoken thoughts. Because if you can't make manifest the thoughts into the material world, then you cannot create. How do you make the words manifest into the material world? You speak them. They become a sound. They become something that other creatures can hear, they can be measured. And so therefore, the thoughts become entities, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so therefore then, every time we speak, we are speaking entities. If I say something to you, ghost, if I say Superman, if I say Loch Ness Monster, then you have a vision of an entity making manifest in your mind.
Yeah, I'm very visual too.
Yeah, and so if people spoke about flying, wouldn't it be nice if man could fly? Then these words went out. And the more these words that go out into this material world, then eventually they're all going to come together, a bit like bits in a computer, and they're going to create something. And so you can see then that this whole world derives out of thought. And it appears to be material. But I wonder whether this material world could collapse back into thought just as easy as it derived out of it.
Maybe that's the direction we're headed.
So we're speaking, and all these words, they're going into what's called the Akashic Records. It's all there, it's all being stored in this energy field. And so when all these words come together, just like the bits in the computer, just like cells through evolution, if there's enough of them, at some stage, the right bits are going to connect to the right bits, which are going to make something manifest. And of course, if you look at evolution, then the manifestations of so many monstrosities and mutations that never worked, then you can think, well, it's just a numbers game, really. And the more information that we've got, the more thoughts that are being transferred into words and written down and stored in computers, then the more material that there is in the world. We're generating
Maybe
material.
that makes sense why they want to put a sensor on everything where they know everything. Where they want to know when you open a pill bottle, they want to know when you open your garbage can, your refrigerator. That's just going to add to all this information.
Yeah.
Well, that
That's
makes a lot
cool.
of sense.
That is, absolute control over each and every individual. They want to know every last thing what we're doing.
Hmm. Wow, that's almost like they're trying to get the rest of the knowledge that they're not getting yet. I never
Yeah,
looked at it that way. Because they want to make everything smart.
yeah,
I like my dehumidifier. That's the smart dehumidifier. So whenever I turn that thing on, it's sending a signal to something telling it it's on.
yeah. And
It's
so
just weird.
then, when you look at, say, like a phone, and when you press the buttons on a phone and it sends a signal out, then there's the main brain, which is Google, is receiving all this information and it's storing it. When you read the Upanishads, these Hindu scriptures, they talk about the Akashic records, and they talk about that everything that's ever been spoken or imagined is in these records. And so
Mm.
it seems to me that the Hindus were onto this, say like 2 or 3,000 years ago, and Google is only just getting onto it now. And instead of the words, the spoken words, going into the ether, into this Akashic records, then the text words, the electronic voices are all being stored in the new Akashic records, which is the world's cerebellum. No, not cerebellum, sorry, cerebral cortex. Because the computers and the Wi-Fi going around the world is like the new brain over the world, isn't it? And this new
It's
brain
definitely, it's
is
like
gathering,
another room.
yeah, all information. And just, you see, when you make comparisons about the spoken word, they don't want the spoken word anymore because the spoken word isn't valuable to them. What's valuable to them is the digital data. Why is the digital data valuable? Because the computer values the digital data. It's the language that it speaks in. It doesn't speak in human vibration. And so it's not that good at gathering that information, even though it can do it. But it's got its own language and it's got its own method of gathering information. So it doesn't want you to speak anymore. It wants you to press buttons and to transfer information digitally.
And then it takes all that information, runs it through its algorithms, and does whatever it does, right?
Comes up with the zeitgeist of the human being in any given area. And so it can see
It knows us. It probably knows us better than we do.
Yeah, oh, of course. When you say it knows us better than we do, you see, I don't think there's barely a person on this planet that knows what it is. I mean, I speculate every single day about what we are. What on earth are we? I don't know what we are, and I've looked at it long and hard, and I've done, a couple of thousand videos about it, and still trying to get a handle on what we are. But to discover what we are is non-discernible. It isn't possible to do this because it's only the imagination which is trying to discover it itself. And if you think in pictorial form and you look at the forms and you think, well, this is stuff. Well, it's not stuff. It's just imagination. And so this is how the whole world is supposedly built in relation to the double split experiment, that consciousness collapses the probable wave function.
And there's another thing that I've been thinking about with like collective consciousness type thing. Oh geez, I just lost my train of thought. When you oh geez.
You've been thinking about something else relating to consciousness?
Yeah, collective consciousness and oh man, I hate when I lose my train of thought. The way that we're connected to the collective consciousness, it's kind of okay, I got it now. Like when I was younger, before there was dating sites, when I was younger, before there was hybrid vehicles, when I was a little boy, before there was airplanes that could take off vertically and then take off horizontally, there's just so many things that I visualized as a young boy that are now reality. Where did I get that information?
Yeah. Where did Leonardo da Vinci get his information when he was designing tanks and submarines and helicopters 500 years before any of these things came into manifestation? From the Akashic records?
So yeah, that really puzzles me.
Yeah. And so when you look at that, then you look at that simple scenario of Leonardo da Vinci, and with all of his sketches, and then 500 years on, the manifestation of things far in excess of his wildest dreams have come into manifestation, entirely brought about by the human thought. And so it just smacks of this whole godly thing. God thought thoughts, and he said words, and thus creation was born. And so that's exactly what we do. We think
That's
thoughts, we speak words, and we create. And if you look at the world now, as opposed to, say, like, let's say 5,000 years ago, look at all the stuff that has been produced. Look at the face of the earth, completely different. Skyscrapers, buildings, and all this sort of stuff all over the place. Manifestations. If you see it before, you see an open landscape. You see fields and you see hills. And then 20 years on or 50 years on, in the so-called future, then all of a sudden you see an entirely different landscape. And every single thing that's been built there derived out of a thought. And when you look at a building, when you look at anything, can you imagine the amount of thoughts that consist of that building? There's so many men involved thinking about this, that, and the other. How many men got together to discover how to bake bricks properly? How much science and math and ingenuity has gone into the modern brick? How much science and math and ingenuity has gone into every single part of any construction? You know, just down to the smallest of details. They've all been thought and been brought into reality via thought over hundreds and hundreds of years. And so now we have these thought parcels, the formulas, and they're written down. And of course they're written down mostly in math. They're just mathematical equations of how you create this and how you create that. Formulas.
right.
Yeah. And so everything...
Yeah, just like everything's a chemical.
Yeah, everything's a chemical, everything's a formula, everything's a mathematical construct or a construct out of language. And yeah, all derived out of thought and imagination.
But you made me think of what I did earlier today. I went on to one of those religious channels. He was having a live stream, and I was talking about how if God breathed everything into or spoke everything into existence, that kind of makes more sense of how that everything is just vibrating energy. And I actually didn't get attacked this time. A lot of people agreed with me. Usually when I do stuff like that, I get, treated like I'm the devil or something.
Yeah.
But I'm just curious to see how, what kind of reaction or what kind of information I get from other people that think different ways. But yeah, they saw what I was trying to say and they understood what I was trying to say. Like he spoke us into existence. Speaking is vibration. We're all vibrating energy. They could put that together.
Well, yeah, because that doesn't dispute what it says in the Bible, basically. It states clearly in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was good, and, God said let there be this and let there be that, and so we all know that, vocalization is a vibration. So if God vocalized and vibrated things into manifestation, then, where's the problem with that? And we know that this is how things make manifest in the material world because all these experiments we do with vibration, you can see how things in a different frequency behave entirely different. And you see this experiment done with salt on a blackboard, and then a very, very high resonance is uh, put through it. Have you seen these experiments?
Yeah, it's beautiful how you get the different shapes.
Yeah, the different shapes, and so depending on the level of frequency, you've got a different shape made manifest. And so I think that we're in this certain frequency whereby this vibration has such complexity, which gives rise to an adhesion, and this is what obviously manufactures the solidity, the illusion of the solidity. But if we step out of this very, very tiny frequency of vibration, then there's nothing there, and this is why the the scientists talk about parallel universes and all the universes being on top of each other, because of course they can be, because if they are vibrating at a different frequency, then they wouldn't come into contact with one another. If the frequency, say like, is 2 miles long, and we can only see a hair breadth of it, then look at all the other hair breadth of frequencies. There could be other entities living within.
Almost an infinite amount.
Yeah, infinite. And so when you take DMT and you see a different world, and I've spoken about seeing a different world overlaid onto this one, then what's happening there? Am I seeing into another dimension? Am I bordering on another dimension of a certain reality?
Or are you
Sometimes,
seeing what's real? Or are you finally being woken up and seeing what's real?
yeah, seeing what's really there. The like the cartoon sort of manifestation
Like
of,
maybe that's being hidden from us.
yeah,
How do we know that what you're seeing on the DMT isn't what's real? And what we're seeing on not on DMT is just being us having something hidden from us.
yeah. I just think it's different levels of consciousness, and so if we tap into a different level of vibration, then we're going to experience something different. And this is what I discern from going on astral projections. You go into another world. It seems very similar in lots of respects with human beings and this, that, and the other, but the whole
I would
vibrational aspect of it is different.
I would want to do experiments. Um, like get a puzzle or get a little build like what a little boat or an airplane or a model that you can build and build it on DMT, and what kind of experience would that be? I don't know because I've never even done it. So
Yeah. Well,
I mean,
DMT is so short-lived. That's the thing about it. But you can extend the period of the trip by taking Changa with it, which extends it to about 45 minutes. And I'm really looking forward to doing that, because to be in that environment where you can look at it for a longer period. Um, the only thing is that I have to say about it, you're given to such astonishment that what I do is when I'm taking open-eyed DMT experiences, I'm just like, because there's no point in focusing on something because you just can't compute it.
so
It's
you
too
wouldn't be
much.
able, would you be able to create something in that frame of mind?
No,
No. Okay.
you're just absolutely astonished, and you look around at everything, and you keep looking back at the same thing, and that's what you do. And I think that would be quite maddening if you was going to be doing that for 45 minutes. It'd be exhausting, and particularly with the feelings that come with it, very often are kind of like orgasmic. It's a tremendous sort of love or sexual expression, some amazing feeling that sedates you and makes you very, very calm and tired and content after. Oh, think if you're in it for 45 minutes, you'd be absolutely exhausted and you just have to
Oh, well,
go to sleep.
you feel satisfied though after what you're saying, huh?
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah,
So it's
it's
fulfilling something. It's fulfilling something for your brain then.
yeah, it's very,
If
very
you feel satisfied.
satiating. And then you feel like you've been in a deep meditation for a couple of hours after. Calm.
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
But I've heard so many people describe it different ways, and most of the stories I've heard are just people being scared.
Well, I've taken it.
Yeah,
Uh,
that they
uh,
said it scared them, and they'll never do it again.
well, it's because everything they weren't ready for it, you see. Because if you don't educate yourself into what you're going to expect, then of course that you're very liable to be scared. Because even though I did educate myself into what many people experienced on my first couple of trips, even the first 5 trips, I was just blown away, just fucking blown away. In there, initially, when you go into the dissociated part of not knowing you're a body, you go into a different world and you just got a conscious awareness and you got some sort of a deep rooted memory and familiarity about, oh, I get it now. I am this. This is where I live. This is me. And coming back to this human existence is the illusion.
Have
And
you ever
you,
run into anybody there yet?
sorry?
Have you ran into any other entities yet?
No.
See, that's another thing that I keep hearing from people. Oh, you're back. We missed you. You know, and they welcome you back and this and that. And why don't you hear that from everybody that does it? I mean,
Yeah,
makes you
yeah,
wonder if it's their imagination or if they're just trying to get more attention or I don't know. You
yes,
wouldn't know for real. You can't just
no,
tap into their brain.
yeah, and I think a lot of the confusement derives out of Terence McKenna talking about machine elves bouncing around, and he's given the impression that there was a third dimension and that there were these communicating elves. But from what I have experienced, it's a two-dimensional thing. It's a flat, cartoony thing, and um, there is a communication, but there's nothing overtly communicating. At least not in my experience so far. It's not like ping, ping, ping. Hello, look at me, look at me. Ooh. Even McKenna says, they don't actually say look at me, but there's a communication going on, and so your mind is giving you something, and so. I think it's the way he embellished his trips that have given rise to you go into this realm of entities bouncing around all over the place. Well, I've not experienced it like that, and I do remember somebody talking about something giving them the bird in a joking way. They take it very lightly. They're saying to you, look, just don't take this too seriously. And I saw that. And I was expecting to see some sort of entity giving it that, but that wasn't how it worked. It was just shapes and configurations, and then it's kind of like a cartoon hand, just coming round like that. And you see it for a split second, and you go, oh, okay. They're
Huh,
giving me the, yeah, they're giving
that's
me the bird.
crazy.
Yeah.
No kidding.
And then in lots of my trips, you get this curl tongue thing. You have to go like that. And it looks very much like a joker. If you look at the face, I can see my face now. It looks like a bit mental. Why would ever you do this curling up tongue thing? What does that mean? But that's what it makes you do. When I'm looking at the trees and the natural nature, it makes you do that. It puts you in absolute ecstasy and it makes you do that. You're doing it
Maybe
with
there's
it.
maybe there's some kind of connection you're making.
No idea what it is. There's obviously a connection.
Helping, maybe helping the energy circle your head.
It's
It would connect your bottom jaw to your top jaw.
yeah, no, it's not like that. It's an expression of
Okay.
fooling around, joking, because it's given you an orgasmic feeling, and it's kind of
Really
like, yeah. And
interesting.
this thing is a sexual thing, of course, and so it's relating what it's given you to how you do sex here, and it's saying, oh, you humans, you like to do this sex thing, this sex thing, yeah? Can you feel it? Can you feel it? And it's giving you this sex all over tingling orgasm thing, and then you stick out your tongue and you go, what the man? So
That makes me think a little. It makes me think a little bit about the video that Paul sent me about the guy, the tough guy that did ayahuasca. I don't know if you
yeah,
saw that.
yeah. You're talking about the bodybuilder.
Yeah, or he was worked for the SWAT team, I think.
All
Big
right,
man.
okay.
And he said that when he tried to move his leg, his arm would move.
Right.
Every time he tried to move his leg, his arm would move instead. Like it rewired his brain. So
There's
maybe
so many different variances of everybody experiences it differently, and so I don't think there's anything definitive to come out of it.
it rewires you somehow for that moment. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just a speculation, but there's got to be a reason for
Is there a reason for anything?
it. We're here for some reason.
Well,
Got to
why?
be.
Why?
That's a beautiful question.
You
I
see,
ask that a lot.
I alluded to this about half an hour ago, and I said that if we are just a mutation via Darwinism, then there is no reason for us being here. And this is why we're so insecure. We think that there must be a reason because we've got the ability to think about a reason. We've got the ability to project ourselves into the future and speculate about the nature of the universe and who created this and who created that. And so, therefore, we think because we're endowed with this ability of cognition that there must be a reason. Well, why should there be a reason? I don't
That
think
brings me back.
consciousness. Sorry?
You don't think this is bringing me back to being the change I want to see.
Yeah, I don't think there has to be a reason, and I don't think there necessarily is a reason. If you look at it from this perspective, that consciousness is just experience in itself, then it doesn't need a
Hmm.
reason to experience itself. And the more is created via certain vibrations and conditions, then the more it experiences. And you see now, we've got a different line of evolution which is going on now, and it's not the cellular line of evolution, it's the digital line of evolution. Computers are evolving, they're evolving themselves, to a great extent. The more we discover what they can do, it's kind of like, that makes it interesting. I wonder if they can do this. I wonder if they can do that. And then we had a few more bits, and then they show us some more stuff. And so it's just another level of evolution going on. And we can see now that there's two levels of evolution, if you want to look at it like that. There's the cellular and there's the digital. And so what's going on there? Has there been a God which brought in the digital vibration into this realm?
I wonder if the electric and digital aspect of this reality came from another dimension. That's what I really wonder.
Yeah.
Because before we had electric, I mean, it wasn't that long ago. But before we had electricity at our fingertips to use, we
Well,
didn't have.
the whole universe is electromagnetism. The human being is electromagnetism.
I should
The,
rephrase it. I guess we haven't been harnessing it to our advantage for that long.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been here all along. I don't see
Right.
why it should have come from another dimension. You know, if we discover something in this dark matter, are we going to be saying or speculating, oh, it's coming from another dimension? We don't even know what on earth these dimensions are, and they're probably all inside each other. Why should there need to be a different spatial thing? Like I said before, if it's only a vibratory thing, then it's all going on in the same space.
Yeah. But I don't know. I remember learning about different dimensions, and they explained it like dimensions were like a book, where each page is a different dimension, and uh,
Yeah,
and
but
then
I'm gonna
listening to
say,
these people, listening to these scientists at CERN talk about their computers and everything, they actually say things like they're bringing knowledge from other dimensions.
yeah, but you see, they explain these dimensions by putting pages next to each other for our minds to be able to
Grasp
get
it,
some sort
right?
of cognition about. You see, if they say that all these dimensions are together in the same space, well, we can't distinguish anything from the one, can we? How do we try to distinguish, say, like 20 dimensions in a bubble? If you say, like, there's 20 dimensions in there, well, what do you mean there's just one bubble? Yeah, but the dimension derives out of the vibratory aspect of it. And so there's 20 different varieties of vibration that's going on in there. And we can't see any of them because we're not in any of those vibrations, but they're all going on there, you see. And so when something then, they say, oh, we brought something back from another dimension, it doesn't mean it's coming through a wormhole. I mean, where's the door? Where's the fucking wormhole? I mean, it's just a billion miles of space out there. No, there's something that makes manifest here now. And how it makes manifest is via a different vibration. And this is the whole thing about conjuring and magic. They can conjure up certain spirits and energies and entities via vibration, via the words and incantations that they make. And when I astral project, or when anybody astral projects, what happens? Do you go into a special place, or does it all happen here? Of course, it all happens here. There's another world
Right.
created. I seem to leave my body into another world. It's still here, you
There's
know.
just a lot we're not seeing, and a lot we're not sensing, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, there's for sure a lot we're not seeing because we're only seeing like a fraction of the spectrum of light. But if we're just seeing a fraction of that, imagine how much little of everything else we're seeing.
How much we're hearing and how much we're feeling. Minuscule, mate. Absolutely minuscule.
We're probably getting very minimal amount of what's really going on around us.
Yeah. And so we'll keep thinking about it. We're up to just under 2 hours now, an hour and 58. And so I
Oh my
think it's
goodness.
best to wrap this one up.
All right.
Um, I'm going to put it on the new site. Um, so I'll just say goodbye now. So thanks, Mario. Been a great talking. And
Yeah, great
so,
talk. I lose track of time when I talk with you somehow.
yeah, that's what they say. So, uh,